Hi there. My name is Larken Bunce, and I'm one of the co-founders and current executive director at Vermont Center for Integrative Herbalism. I'm a clinical herbalist and teacher, and also a somatics practitioner. We founded VCIH about 17 years ago. This is our 18th year, and so I've been teaching, developing curriculum, and training folks to become clinical herbalists and community herbalists, and to develop relationship with plants for all that time. I've been someone who calls themselves an herbalist for about 30 years, studying formally during that time, but I've really been a person who loves plants and relates to plants as family for my whole life. I was lucky to be raised by parents who had those same kinds of relationships with plants and who looked to them for healing and relationship. So I'm excited to talk to you about 10 questions that are interesting about herbal medicine to me today. And if you're interested in learning more from me or studying with me, you can check out VCIH, or Vermont Center for Integrative Herbalism. We have training programs these days that you can attend without ever coming to Vermont, though we are centered in Vermont, and we do have an online or an in-person apprenticeship. And the rest of our programs are hybrid programs. So you come to campus twice a year if you're able and would like to, or 2 6-day intensives, and otherwise everything else is conducted live on Zoom. So I encourage you to check that out at vtherbcenter.org. You can also check out my more personal work outside of VCIH, which includes somatic coaching for practitioners in particular, but I also work with individuals for non-practitioner type concerns and accompaniment. And also I teach classes outside of VCIH as well. 2 very interesting ones coming up are around assessment that I'm doing with Sovereignty Herbs and Erica Galantin in July. And I'm also doing a somatics for practitioners series over the course of 4 weeks in October. So check those out on Sovereignty Herbs if you're interested, and check out VCIH and some of the programming that we're offering there. I'm also doing a tongue assessment series in July at VCIH. So if you're interested in getting a bit more foundation into assessment in general and tongue assessment specifically, I'm doing a 4-week tongue assessment training that's online, and that's at vtherbcenter.org. What are some recommendations for how clinical herbalists can build a client base? My best recommendation for how clinical herbalists can build a client base is to teach. By far, the most clear way that people understood what I had to offer when I was starting out, and still to this day, is through coming to engage with me in a more general sense, in a less pressure sense, in a less focused on them sense, through a workshop or, some kind of conference, event, etc. That's been always the easiest way for people to sort of test out what an herbalist's kind of philosophy is, what their style is, to see if they like them as a person. And it's also a great way for you to get your philosophy across, and to kind of give folks a sense of how you might be as a clinician, and what your priorities and intentions are. But it's really, everything from just people seeing, your offering out in the world, kind of just advertisement. It gets your name in front of folks repeatedly. And then again, if they actually are able to come and engage, they're going to learn something, take something away, which is such a bonus. And I really can't remember a time when I've taught a class, workshop, conference, event, or an online program where someone didn't contact me afterwards or come up to me afterwards and say, hey, I've got this going on. Do you see clients? Obviously telling folks that you see clients and that you're happy to work with them, and teaching about what you especially want to work with clients around is a good way to go about it. But you don't have to. It's often, I've been doing an herb walk before and people are like, do you see clients? I feel like we would be a good fit. So sometimes it's the content that really does the work for you, but other times it is really just about people getting to know who you are, which doesn't come across necessarily through, marketing or through your kind of polished delivery that you might have outside of a class setting. So yeah, teach what you know, teach what you love, teach what you're good at, and people will come. Second question. How did you begin to mold your herbal path as a teacher, and what were your first teaching experiences like? I grew up with teachers in my family and librarians. So I kind of knew early on that I would be a person that would probably talk to folks about things. I kind of have the orientation to spreading information. I love knowledge. I love understanding things, and I love what happens when other people understand things, when I can help facilitate that. And so witnessing that in my family and sort of value on that led me to teach workshops and share just what I knew at the time, starting, in my early 20s. So I've been teaching for 30 years in one way or another, but of course, in the beginning, it was much more, just kind of peer sharing about basic herbal type information, plant knowledge, things like that. And over time has become more about helping people, not just to support themselves, but helping folks become the people who teach and who are clinicians and are really then directly working with folks around their health. And I feel really proud to say that there are so many people out there who I've been part of their path and their journey to become teachers and to become clinicians, which is very gratifying. So yeah, I think in terms of, what I would give in terms of advice or just how folks might carve out a teaching path, I think doing some of what I did, which is, teach what you know, teach what you've experienced with, teach what comes with your passion and excitement. Everyone always says you want to try to teach things that your audience needs or wants, and that's absolutely true. But if it's not something you also feel passionate and excited about, then the work that you need to do to be a good teacher of that subject can be more challenging, and also the ways in which your passion really comes through and makes what you're teaching exciting and engaging is really important. So you can have incredible content, and if it doesn't feel exciting or juicy or meaningful or inspiring to you, if you don't want to keep learning about it, it's much less likely to be any of those things for folks who are listening. So I just am a big fan of following what I'm excited about, what I want to learn more about. The best way to learn things is to teach about them. So start with a seed of things you know. And for me, a big part of how I've learned is to kind of build on my knowledge through pushing myself as a teacher. So wanting to always be on something solid that I understand, but then, each class I teach gives me an opportunity to update my knowledge, dig into research, look at further resources, kind of explore what other herbalists do, what other specialties that are not herbal medicine do and think, and, bring those things together into a conversation, that I'm kind of sharing with people, like, hey, I was just looking at this sort of body of information, whether it's, written or kind of just in the kind of herbal information environment, pulling it together and saying like, I was listening in on this conversation, basically, like I want you to kind of have you all join into it. And again, that is so invitational and so I find much more engaging than just sort of let me deliver to you, what I know or have done for, 20 years. And this is it, this is kind of becomes sort of fixed and frankly, a little stale. So I have things that I've taught for 30 years at this point that I'm still not bored of because I am still learning about it or I'm still exploring. Once you have a solid foundation in one place, you can easily build on top of it and bring in other information and knowledge and ideas, even provide ideas that are maybe counter to what you're doing or kind of give a different perspective. So yeah, I think it has to be something that you love, that you're excited about, that you just feel genuinely curious about. And then that always makes other people more genuinely curious and want to listen and want to engage. So I think that's my advice for anybody who's thinking about teaching or kind of in the beginning. Maybe you're like, I think everyone's telling me they really just want to know about whatever digestive health, and I'm not that excited about it, but it seems like that's what quote sells, or that's what, the market seems to be suggesting. And yeah, we do, if that's how you're trying to support yourself, you do need to listen to that, but you still just have to find a way to make it what you love. That's important, because that's what ultimately will have people excited to listen to you again and to work with you as a clinician, if that's what you're doing, and to learn more from you in other ways. So bring the passion. Let's see. Which herb have you found useful for a condition that is different from what we commonly understand and accept as its healing property? And how did you use it? This is always a tricky question because I don't really know everything that everybody does, of course. So maybe lots of other people do use it this way. And because I'm a teacher and have been teaching for so long, some of my like weird uses are now a little more common in sort of the circles of my students, at least. And so I'm not 100% sure this is definitely super unique, but I use eleuthero or Eleutherococcus sintacoccus as not just an adaptogen, which I actually use it as an adaptogen, I think less than most folks, but also as an immune stimulant in acute situations. It actually has some research that puts it on par, close in proximity in terms of short-term immune stimulating effect with echinacea. And so I learned that when I was first kind of really exploring this plant to be able to teach about it. And so I started trying that out and found it to be quite useful in that regard. And it's helpful, when you get multiple sort of actions out of a plant, obviously, as they all have, but, oftentimes needing immune stimulation alongside of an adaptogenic effect is, that's a common need. So for me, the main place that I've actually employed it is where folks have immunosuppression and otherwise are not experiencing a lot of ease around energy or feeling pretty maladaptive or kind of low capacity, not able to adapt to the level of need or sort of what's being required of them, not just immunologically, but in general, like stress and, life responsibilities, et cetera. So eleuthero can be lovely as a like less stimulating adaptogen. And by less, I mean less than rhodiola, for example, or even schizandra. So it can kind of give a bit of support for folks. And I would always use that with more nourishing and building adaptogens and other similar plants if someone was really quite exhausted. But it can be supportive there where also a person keeps getting sick and needs something acute, for acute support in the moment. So I use it actually in folks who are, historically it would be kept getting the flu repeatedly or kept being, having a cold. These days I'm using it where folks are seeing more frequent RSV, certainly COVID, of course. So just something, to kind of pull out at the first sign of, I'm not sure what this is, but I'm having some symptoms. I might use it also sort of prophylactically. I'm not saying it's a preventive at all necessarily, but just to kind of keep immune function up. And I like that so that I'm not just always using echinacea for that purpose, as we all, there's disagreement. Everyone has different opinions about whether echinacea can or should be used kind of consistently if it has some, diminished returns in that regard. So I like eleuthero a little better for kind of more long-term use or to weave in with other kind of immune stimulants. But the other place that I like it a lot, and that's actually paired with echinacea, is for tick bite. So folks worried about Lyme, as we all are here in the Northeast, and the co-infections. So at the sign of bite, as soon as it's tick's been removed, I'll start oral eleuthero plus echinacea. And I usually put some licorice in there to make it taste less terrible, but it's actually not too bad. So that's my maybe unique-ish use for eleuthero. All righty. How about stress relief tea? So I work a lot with stress, mental health, trauma. Those are kind of my focuses. So I have many formulas that I've created over the years. I have a lot of go-to plants. And, it's always going to be a struggle to get a specific formula or favorite plant for those purposes out of me. But I really thought about it and thought, what would be a tea that I might recommend to a kind of wide swath of folks who are just like, I just kind of want to feel like I can relax and show up, be present, enjoy connecting with people or find some pleasure relating to plants or just kind of be more present to myself. That's really how I think about stress. It's like being able to be as present as possible, or the lack of stress or less stress is being able to be as present as possible and to really get to be a little bit more available for what brings you joy, for a little more comfort, a little more ease, a little more sense of your purpose or what you're here for. So that can look all kinds of ways for different people, right? Some people need a bit more kind of enlivening to reach that place, and some folks need a bit more relaxation and kind of opening to reach that. So it depends is the answer, really. But there are plants that we as herbalists might refer to as amphoteric, maybe amphoteric nervines, that are both kind of enlivening and awakening and also relaxing and settling. And in particular, while there are lots of those non-aromatic nervines that are more bitter, that work wonderfully, I find that to get that amphoteric effect, often I'm using at least some or working with some of the more aromatic nervines because they can both brighten and liven, kind of uplift and disperse, and then also relax and, help to kind of settle and ease us. So when I don't know how a person got there, I kind of also don't always know what the road through that would be. So I'm looking for that kind of amphoteric formula. So for me, it's the lemon friends. So I do use lemon balm, Melissa officinalis, but I don't use it as much as I use lemon verbena and lemongrass. And while those are not local to me in Vermont, I do grow them every year, and I am able to get a really nice harvest with growing them outside and then bringing them in and overwintering them. So I really recommend everybody grow a little bit of lemon verbena and lemongrass if you can. So I combine those two in usually equal parts with some anise or fennel. I find the flavor, if you like that flavor, to be a really nice complement. It kind of rounds out those two lemon friends. And if you love lemon balm and have a ton of it, absolutely, you could bring that in as a third or replacement for one of the others. And then I'll usually blend in some licorice. That's just because I'm a dry guy, and all of those are kind of dry plants. And for me, stress definitely comes more when I'm more dry. And also a great anti-inflammatory. So I usually add that in, but if you don't love that flavor either, or if you just don't want the sweetness, I do try to find some way to moisten up the formula. So you might combine some mallow, just like a big chunk of mallow leaf or root. You might also really just throw a teaspoon of flax seeds into the formula when you make it, and that, just per cup. That really also creates a beautiful kind of mouthfeel, soft mouthfeel, and balances some of the real drying nature of lemon balm and lemon verbena. And then the other plants that I will play with, depending on the person and what they like, is either rose or lavender. Both play well. If you like both, you could add both. But both play well with the lemon verbena and the lemongrass and that kind of anisey, fennel-y flavor, and also kind of has that uplifting and brightening effect while also being beautifully relaxing and kind of holding that energy of holding the heart that we, of course, all associate with rose. So lemon verbena and lemongrass as my amphoteric intervenes. They have a ton of traditional use in the places in the world that they've been used over time, which includes lots of the sort of Mediterranean and lots of North Africa, the Swana region, definitely lots of tradition of use in northeastern, Western Europe in general, because of import and sort of moving of that knowledge over time. So, and of course, lots of use of lemongrass in South Asian and East Asian medicine and cuisine. So lots of good traditions with those plants. And I'm sure others that I haven't mentioned, but just to name that if you want to learn more about them, those are lots of places to look outside of kind of typical quote Western herb books or sources. All right. Let's see. How about how long did you study plant medicine before feeling qualified to call yourself an herbalist? Big question. As I mentioned in my intro, I had parents who loved herbs and studied herbalism themselves and applied it, in their own lives, and then with me as a kid. So I was aware of plant medicine from the beginning of my awareness. I didn't really know there was necessarily a thing called an herbalist until maybe as a teenager. And I started reading her books. Then I studied, probably my first formal herb class was in college. And I think that I didn't really say I was an herbalist until at some point in college or right after. And I think that for me, it's not about being qualified. And I would never say that about any Betty being sort of qualified or not. To me, herbalist is kind of a less of a qualification and more of a commitment. So it's about, for me, saying like, I think I'm kind of taking this step of officially saying I'm committed to the plants. And I'm committed to being a person that helps support other people to be in more deep relationship with plants. So while yes, I questioned at times over my life of this work and, doing different courses or studying with different teachers, like, am I there yet in some kind of way? It wasn't, am I there yet as an herbalist, but am I there yet to say, I'm going to do herbal work in this particular way? In other words, there, is some level of qualification to take on the responsibility of supporting someone's health when they have serious health concerns, when they have ongoing, even life-threatening health concerns, when you're charging them money to do it, when you're integrating in part of their healthcare team. There's things that you need to have competency with. And you can get that competency in all kinds of ways. You can go to herb school, you can do apprenticeship, even self-study for much of that work is possible if you're diligent. So I don't think there's like a specific way even that you have to come to that level of competence. But for me, we can be an herbalist, a person can be an herbalist at any level of competence if there is that commitment, if there is that sort of statement to yourself and to the plants and to your community that you're committed to being one of the people who sort of creates and maintains and supports relationship with the plants or the people around you, or with the people around you. So I think I've been calling myself an herbalist and hopefully being able to do that work, I think, of living that commitment for about 30 years. Hopefully 30 more. What is the one thing you do daily to practice your craft? That is a tricky question. I wasn't sure if I would answer it. But I think I don't do it daily because I'm in Vermont where the weather is not very agreeable for this to be throughout the year. But for every moment that there is bare ground, which is about 8 months of the year if we're lucky, I make bouquets. So even though bouquets are not necessarily always medicinal from like the plants being, herbs, to me, just really the pleasure and the beauty and the relationship with the plants, because they're outside my house, has me tending to them and being with them in a daily way. To me, all of that really keeps me in the joy and in the, again, relationship in a way that, making formulas or even teaching other people how to make formulas or, understanding health conditions and, all that juicy stuff, teaching about the plants, all that has a level, especially after so many years, can have a level of, stress or pressure. It has a sense of, there's a lot of intellectual engagement that has to happen, which of course there's nothing wrong with. But again, as I said about the teaching question, like teach what you love, teach what you feel passionate about. And for me, having this relationship that doesn't involve my brain really, or it doesn't require my brain, it really just requires my senses, my heart, my love, my embodied joy with the plants. That is an important nourishment for me so that I can also be engaging my brain and I can also manage and hold and have greater capacity for the stress and pressure of being in this world right now, just as a person, but as an herbalist and as a teacher and, holder of a community. So, bouquets, my bouquet medicine practice is actually an incredibly important, gift, really, to me, that I engage, at least 3 times a week, I would say, and then I enjoy them every day in between. Who do I go to for health advice? It's an interesting one, and it's changed over time. I think that the longer I am an herbalist and a practitioner and someone who other people go to advice for, the more I have the knowledge that I think mostly I need for non-medical or like not Western medical information. Certainly, I will also, ask peers and colleagues, herbalist friends, to weigh in because, we're often not our best doctor or often not our best practitioner. We need that outside perspective and just the support and care. We don't have to do it on our own. But usually there's not a ton of new information that's herb related or sort of diet and supplement related. What I'm mostly interested in getting is perspectives that are outside of what I might suggest, right? Or what an herbalist might suggest. I really strongly believe in an integrative approach. I think that what we call Western medicine or conventional, or I call technological medicine, which is very specialized, it has incredible diagnostic capacity. It has an incredible level of ability to do life-saving care where that's necessary. And that's been necessary in my life, my family and friends' lives. Pharmaceuticals can be incredible. Of course, all of those things can be used inappropriately. And there's access issues with all of those, where a lot of us don't have consistent ability to get those for all kinds of reasons, financial being a big one. So all of that said, the places where it's been helpful, it is, useful to have medical information. That's really what I want. I want that good deep diagnostic information, that's different from what I can come up with through maybe more traditional assessment methods or just my more kind of holistic assessment kind of brain, the way I might be thinking about it. I want that totally kind of different angle. It's not really a completely different set of information, but it's just using a different language and a way of asking different questions than I would or than herbalists tend to. I just think it's really, really helpful and important. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of integrative medicine at this point in my life. And so I have a great integrative doc, and I have a lot of specialists who I don't think would even consider themselves integrative, but their care, fits well within the context of the larger kind of web of care that I create for myself. And I recognize I'm really privileged to be able to do that, to have a community of practitioners that's really open and collaborative, and that I have access to that. So yeah, pretty much I have seeking advice that I think a lot of herbalists or maybe herb students would be surprised. But I'd say, always having at least one really trusted friend and colleague that you can kind of bounce things off of so that you're not in your own healthcare journey all by yourself is really important. So do seek advice. Yeah, if you don't have doctors that you can trust or who respect or, really hold you in the way that I'm lucky to, I'd also say, don't feel like you have to integrate that just for the sake of being integrative, right? That's important too. We have to have it coming, in a context that's really able to receive and feel like it respects what we need and our priorities too. Next question. What does the herbalism industry need most right now to evolve positively besides more herbalists? I feel like I might be a little contrarian with this answer. And I want to say I'm very respectful of my many colleagues who are more in what we call the herbal industry. I guess I'm part of the herbal education industry in a way. But in terms of supplements and herbal products and the world herb trade, that aspect of the industry, I think, while there are so many great efforts being put into figuring out how to have fair trade and attention to exploitive labor practices and trying to make sure that, wildcrafted plants are being done in a sustainable way, an ethical way, that there's right relationship with the communities and, of growers and of harvesters. I think ultimately that the industry, most industries on a global scale, which includes the herb industry, feel like they're on an unsustainable path. And so I worry about the commodification of plants just as beings and how globalized it has become, while of course I appreciate being able to access plants from all over the world. I think that it will eventually become necessary, and it would be ideal if we didn't wait until we didn't have a choice, to make it less of an industry and more localized and more bioregional and more about trade and work with plants that are closer to us and that we can have a better sense of the relationship of the people and the responsibility of the people who are trading in those plants to the ecosystems that they're part of and to the communities that really tend those plants and the farmers. And yeah, it just feels very complex. And I think, that level of just taking some time to really self-reflect as herbalists, people who love the plants and love the planet and want people to be well, that we need to kind of start like before now, but here we are, asking some of those harder questions about, can an industry that trades in isolated parts of an ecology actually be sustainable? And if not, then how do we continue this beautiful, important relationship of humans with plants all over the world in a way that honors who they are and contributes to the health and well-being of all of us equally? I don't have the answer, but I think asking those questions and related questions by people who are doing that work directly and in communities who are most affected by that, the harms of those questions not being asked. Yeah, that's kind of where I feel like the industry needs to go. And I invite us all to be in that as much as possible. What's your favorite part of being an herbalist and your big why that keeps you learning and growing? Great question. I think that my favorite part about being an herbalist is those moments when people really, whether I'm teaching or in clinic, where people really feel that sort of waking up to the personhood of plants, like the way that it's not it shifts from being about how the plants can help them or can be a healing sort of material, and moves much more towards like they're these beings that are actually part of our ecology, that have their own history of life here on this planet. They're older than we are evolutionarily, and that there's so much that we don't know about them. We talk a lot as herbalists about like the wisdom of plants, which I really deeply believe in on a spiritual level and on a philosophical level, but also really on a biological level. There's incredible wisdom in the way that their chemistry is able to interact for, just for its own, plant's own sort of life processes, but also able to interact with other species systems in the ways that we see it does for us and for other animals and insects and birds, etc., but also the ways they interact with each other. Just all the communication that happens that we don't fully understand yet, but we're starting to get a little bit of the glimpse, or at least science, so-called Western science, is really kind of starting to say like, oh, here's ways we can understand that in kind of our modern context. We also know there have been all kinds of ways that it's been understood by people over time, and herbalists have often held that knowledge and told those stories. And I love being able to be one of those people who's figuring out the best ways for each person to really hear the stories of plants, to like, is it through a scientific kind of like chemistry lens, pharmacology? Is it through a more spiritual kind of like energetic perspective? Is it as a relationship, like this plant is a person who has its own personality and their own purpose, and we get to interact with that in the same way we would with another human person. Whatever the language is, or whatever kind of the narrative that hooks people, I love when they finally get it and they're like, oh, this plant is my friend, or this plant is my teacher, or this plant is like my helper, or this plant is like holding me to account. I just think it's beautiful, and it's a way in which our kind of the overculture here, in North America, Turtle Island is really missing. It's missing that sense of relationship and belongingness, and like really like being held by more than other humans, which even that we're really missing in a good way. We just lack a density of connection. And when we count only on people, which is so complicated for so many of us, then we end up feeling really isolated and alone. And if we just really tune our senses and our hearts and our minds to all the other beings, especially plant beings that we can connect to, the network gets real thick real fast. The connectivity it gets so much more rich. There's so much more available to us to feel tethered and to feel belonging. I love that. What is your vision or dream of the future of herbalism and herbal medicine events? It's big dream, big vision. I dream of an herbalism that is not just one herbalism, that it's pluralistic, that it is diverse ecology of many different practitioners, practices, lineages, equally practicing side by side, visible, respected, able to exchange information and knowledge from a place of integrity, where resources and visibility and care are given to each and every tradition. Where Indigenous herbalists are uplifted and their plants are protected, where Black herbalists are uplifted, where herbalists of the global majority who find themselves practicing on this land and in our the larger herbal community are uplifted and respected and particularly honored for all the ways in which non-European traditions are in the foundations and the very roots of what we call Western herbalism. That there's visibility, that there's conversation, that there's material reparation, and herbalism that has justice in mind, that has a healing and a reckoning, healing of history, the ways that so much harm and injustice is woven into the fabric of our culture, and so therefore, of course, our medicine. And we might like to think that we've escaped it, but that is not possible to do without real intentional effort. My dream is that we come to that work together and really lean into it, taking up the roles that we each have and the responsibilities that we each have based on the position and orientation we have to power and privilege in this country and within this community of practice. So I dream of herbalism that is rich, built on relationship, oriented to relationship and reciprocity with the land, protection of the land, return of the land to Indigenous people, support from all of us for land back. And based on that, then we get trauma-informed herbalism. We get herbalism that centers disability justice. We get herbalism that is gender expansive and affirming of trans and non-binary folks, that's inclusive and affirming of neurodiversity and of queerness. We get this incredible, again, wildly diverse garden of many, many voices and many, many wisdoms. When the most marginalized are centered, everyone flourishes. And in my dream of herbalism, we will all flourish if we're able to really embody that lesson. Thanks so much for listening. It's been great sharing some thoughts with you. If you're interested in studying with me more, you can definitely check out Vermont Center for Integrative Herbalism online at vtherbcenter.org. We've got our Roots Apprenticeship in person in Vermont from April through November next year. If you want to think about the family or clinical programs, they start in February and our applications are due August 15th. So head to our website to apply or get in touch to learn more. If you're interested in studying more short-term just with me, you can find more on my website, larkenbunce.com. I've got some fun stuff coming up in July and then again in October. In July, you can check out some assessment courses. One with Sovereignty Herbs, which is Erica Galantin's wonderful platform, or at VCIH, again, through our website, a 4-week tongue assessment course. You can also head over to Erica's website, sovereigntyherbs.com, for the somatics for herbalists, practitioner skills training, which is another 4-week series in October. That one's going to be super juicy and fun. If you're thinking about being an herbalist, if you're already in school, if you've just graduated, or you've been doing it for a long time and you're like, I could use a little bit of support. I love to do practitioner skills training and I love to teach somatics, and it's the most fun to herb people because we tend to be really excited about being in embodied relationship with plants. So we start from there and bring that into the clinic space. So check those out. I really look forward to seeing more of you. And again, thanks so much. And I hope you have a beautiful summer if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and enjoy lots of plants this year.